Well, again, everyone, my name's Brandon Gomes. I got the pleasure of being the moderator here today. I am best known from a TV show on MTV called Siesta, but today I stand here as the CEO of Siesta, a premium hemp brand based in Tampa, Florida. Here with me, I have Rosanna Catalano, also known as Ro. I have Dustin Brauns, the CEO of Modern Distribution. I have JD McCormick, as we heard from earlier, the president of American Healthy Alternatives, plus the president of Florida Healthy Alternatives. And then I have my friend Michael Thompson, the CEO of Dankalicious brands. Starting, I think I just want to go into the first point, which is shaping the future in industry solutions. And JD, this is for you. The proactive approach, right? What is the importance of taking a proactive approach for operators, for...
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, some of our members benefit from the information they get from the association in real time. Joining the association gives you a unique insight into what lawmakers and regulators and really the general public think about when they think about your industry, right? I think everybody has their own customer base and the employees that they have, and they exist in their own echo chambers, their own universes. So it's very difficult for a small retailer or a small manufacturer to know what a legislator is thinking about, what's been in the media consistently, and what does that mean for your company, and how can you prepare yourself for any necessary industry changes.
I love that for sure. And that's kind of what we did. We got ahead of the curve, and, I feel blessed to be able to be up here with y'all and be able to talk with you guys about things going on legislatively, federally, anything like that. And what just happened in Florida was huge. I'd actually say historic. Can you expand on maybe just the veto bill that we got here and some of the successful strategies you implemented in getting that?
So at the end of legislative session, we fought really, really hard. We lost in the House by 4 votes. It was 64 to 48. They had a 4-vote majority to get the bill passed. But that helped to illustrate to the governor's office and really anyone that was paying attention that this was contentious. This was not a unanimous decision. It wasn't down the party line. We had some Republicans on our side, and they had some Democrats on their side. It was a very contentious issue because it is a nonpartisan issue. There are folks in rural areas and folks in urban areas. They both use this product. It is not on party lines. It is across the entire socioeconomic demographic span. The veto specifically was probably one of the most stressful periods of my entire life. For about 90 days, I risked everything, my career, every dollar the association had in its bank account, and every bit of intellectual capital and political capital that I had brought to the table. I risked everything on that veto. I was the only person in the first few weeks advocating that we go for that veto, that we go to the governor and ask him to veto this bill. Everyone else was telling me, just save that money and file a lawsuit and try to kill the law that way. I think with many great geniuses and many great people in history, they stand out amongst the crowd, right? And I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I stood out amongst the crowd. I was the only person at that time that said, we have to go for a veto. I was crazy enough to think it because at the time, you have to remember, it passed the legislature. The governor very rarely vetoes bills that are passed by his legislature because his legislature has a super majority of Republicans. The Senate is Republican. The House is Republican. So when bills inevitably go to the governor, he usually signs them. This was an extreme rarity, an extremely rare case. And we were able to illustrate to them and their office and all of their staff that this was the wrong move. That, in fact, all they were attempting to do is kill our industry and then take our voters for Amendment 3, right? It's very simple. If we go away, they're the only ones in town that can sell it, right? And so working through that entire process was very, very stressful, but we ended up being successful, thank frickin' God. I think it took me probably 72 hours for that whole thing to set in. I just didn't think it was real. Like I read the letter and I'm like, oh my God, is this real? Holy crap, so.
I still kind of to this day think like, wait, we really got the veto,
Yeah.
because we lost. I mean, just to back what JD was saying, we lost every step of the legislative process.
Oh, yeah.
We
Yep.
went up to Tallahassee, 5 hours from my house. Every single stop was like a hard no. Yep, sorry, get out of here, you lost. Go home. Come back next week. We're going to lose again.
Yeah.
But having faith and just being a part of the association, man, I pat yourself on the back. All you guys pat yourself on the back. I'll pat yourself on the back if I need to, but you guys did great. And just on the contrary of the proactive approach,
Yeah.
Ro, if we could talk about the reactive approach and what are the consequences of having a reactive approach?
So I think we all pretty much know that when you are proactive, the outcomes are a lot better than when you are reactive. And the same holds true in politics. You want to be proactive rather than reactive. And that veto, while we are very grateful for that veto, that was the result of JD putting together an incredible lobbying team that I'm very grateful myself that I was a part of. We talked about strategy. We worked with public relations, and we worked with the industry, and it took all of that to get that across the finish line in those 90 days. No one just sat on their hands while we lost at the legislature and we're just hoping for a veto. There was a lot of work, a lot of meetings behind the scenes to make that happen. When you are reactive, it's essentially like having a heart attack, right? There are folks, and I apologize if this hits home for some of you, but we've all maybe heard of the person that had a heart attack. Oh my gosh, it was out of the blue. Or we've heard about having a heart attack to a person that has high blood pressure, high cholesterol, not very sedentary. This person hasn't taken care of themselves and they haven't gone to the doctor. By not being active politically, you are just rolling the dice for some big heart attack or heartbreak with regards to regulations and your business. You need to be proactive, continually watching, continually being involved, continually having your voice heard, and you will have much better outcomes. It needs to be strategic and planned, and that's where your association steps in and helps you.
Thank you, Ro. No, well said, honestly. And I guess just expanding on that, because you just went into what the association and, what you guys have done. That's a lot. You guys do a great job. But on just like the everyday operator, the everyday person, if I could hear from you, Michael, on just navigating advocacy. And I guess, what are some practical tips that you can offer for effective advocacy?
Yeah, so I would say, the three things. So time, treasure, and talent. If you're unable to contribute or become a member, purchase from members, vote with your dollars. If that happened alone, if people stop purchasing from manufacturers that aren't really at the table, that aren't politically active, and they specifically voted with their dollars, buying from manufacturers that are members of American Healthy Alternatives or the state chapter, that would go such a long way. Another thing I would say is, the vernacular, the vocabulary. A lot of people don't know this, but I come from the corporate cannabis side. I worked for one of the largest MSOs, and I helped build it for 5 years before I came over to the hemp side. Is, what I mean by vernacular is we're calling ourselves the hemp industry, but the reality is we're a federally legal cannabis industry. And voters are confused because they think it's illegal. And what they don't realize is most of the dispensaries are selling products, almost 70% of their products qualify as federally legal hemp. So when they see the ballot box, they say, oh, this is legalization. This is going to be great. What they don't know is that these same companies that are lobbying for their monopolistic privileges in limited marketplaces, you're going to have higher prices, lower quality, more product shortages. They're also lobbying to shut down one of the greatest destroyers of poverty, which is the free market, right? So if we stop calling ourselves the hemp industry, start calling ourselves the federally legal cannabis industry, I think that would do wonders as well.
That's it. I'm calling them the federally legal cannabis industry from now on. That's how we're rolling like that. And because it's true. No, it's absolutely true. You're 100% right. And I guess, you just talked about, having experience on both sides. How does the advocacy work compare of like major MSO companies compared to the hemp industry?
Well, I think, they're heavily funded, but that's, you don't want to get discouraged, because if we look at the microbreweries defeated the Anheuser-Busch's, right? And, we're outfunded, some could say an order of magnitude, but they don't have passion. They have, they have hubris. They think that, well, we don't need to be proactive on this XYZ because we have all the money, right? And I think that's a big downside. They think it's inevitable that Amendment 3 is going to pass, right? And they spent over $100 million, and the polling's coming in the 50, the high 50% percentile. So I would say that's one of the major big differences is the funding, and then also PR as well. So we're probably going to see a story come out pretty soon in the Miami Herald that's going to be trying to make the hemp another reason to go away from that term hemp and move towards the federal legal cannabis. Is they're going to try to destroy from a PR standpoint, they're going to try to destroy the hemp industry, coming up pretty soon. So,
and I hear you for sure. And moving on to Dustin, if I could hear from you, are there any distributors in the room? Any store owners? Okay, cool, awesome. Well, Dustin, you're the CEO of Modern Distribution, right? I guess what made you feel the call to get involved in the association?
In the association, primarily because there was such a lack of education, and there still is. You got to piggyback on Michael's kind of topic. I get all the time as a direct-to-consumer brand owner as well. Oh, this is just CBD. It's just, it's not going to get me high. There is no THC to it. They truly don't understand the capabilities of federally legal cannabis. It's one of two approaches. It's either an alternative cannabinoid soup, or it's an ineffective sleepy time for my grandma kind of product. They don't understand there's this middle ground that is, for a purist like myself, like the pure quintessential cannabis flower. And that's the big missing thing is, if I get it all the time, well, it's not dispensary grade. Like, people think that there's this myth of this is this and this is that. And we're on an educational downturn where, unfortunately, store owners are not educating people. It's a convenience thing. It gets thrown on a shelf, high margins. Here you go, brother. See you later. There is no education. And the very few people that are educating, and kudos to them, they're doing a good job, but they're not doing everything they can. There's systems like the Roundup, donation boxes, their own memberships that are missing. And that's been one of my biggest pushes. There's no reason why stores, if you have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 stores, that you're not doing a Roundup system, that you're not doing a donation box, and you're not personally a member. And then all the brands that you should be carrying are also member brands.
I actually have a thought on that. I've come up with this idea over the last couple of years because I see it everywhere I go. I think our entire industry suffers from collective PTSD. For 100 years, we have been worried about whether or not blue lights are going to go off behind our cars, right? When you have such a systemic, traumatic stress disorder that carrying around something you use on a daily basis puts you in fear of going to jail, it's very difficult for companies to market themselves, to educate properly, to talk about its federal legality. Because so many companies, right, they started in the last 3 or 4 years, they're kind of unsure about the law, but they know that it's legal somehow, and they're just out there selling these products, and they're scared to market themselves. In Tennessee, you drive up and down, I think it's Highway 20 or Highway 40, I think it's Highway 40, between Nashville and Knoxville. There are billboards everywhere talking about hemp and cannabis and flower and all this stuff. That's because they have a law, right? That law was lobbied. And I think once this industry gains more confidence in itself, it will begin to market itself and educate the public more, which will then inevitably bring most people to our side.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. You want to back off that? Or?
Yeah, and that comes back to, I think there's a misunderstanding at the store and distributor level where people trust manufacturers too much. There's a lot of problematic manufacturers out there that are doing white label COAs and fictitious this and things that just they're not doing things by the book or correctly. No child resistant packaging, unicorns and fairies, and all this stuff. That's what's getting law enforcement's attention. And when everybody comes screaming and crying to us after they get raided, we look at the details of the search warrant, and it comes out to COAs weren't right. They were 2 years old. They were selling to minors, right? So I'm gonna come back to the police yourself. You guys have got to. We are selling a regulated cannabis product, and if it's not regulated by your state, it is regulated by the feds, and we need to start acting like it. Do your due diligence, read your paperwork, make sure you're using trusted brands that are transparent, they're updating their labs, they are doing everything by the book. It is not worth the extra 10% margin or whatever you think it's worth to go to jail or to end up in tens of thousands of dollars worth of criminal defense. And you definitely don't want to have to call Roe.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Because she's going to yell at you for being silly.
No, right, exactly. And I guess from before you were with the association and as a distributor, and now that you're with them, I guess what key benefits have you gained as a distributor being with the AHAA?
Real-time information. That is by far the most valuable thing. We've got an incredible network of specialized people, whether it's economics, whether it's lobbying, legal, whatever I need to know about or I need to be updated on, it's instant. I can pick up the phone, even if it's in the next day, somebody's going to get back to me with an answer. There's also a lot of benefit in having these relationships and having these networks so that if something was to ever arise, I don't have to worry. I know that I've been donating for the last 2.5 years, and my money's been going to that I use it as my rainy day. My as she says, her political capital, that's my legal capital. So if anything does ever happen, I know there's a team of people behind me that I can pick up the phone and call, and they're going to come running to our aid because I do the same thing for them.
Exactly.
If JD, Roe, any of these guys need anything, they know they can call us, and we're going to be there. This is not the only state, not the only event that we've been working on. And I do want to go back to the fact of, even if you're a $250 member a month, you're going to get the same support that you are as a $50,000 a month. You might not get a call as quickly, just keep that in mind, but you are going to get the same benefits because at the end of the day, we all have the same common goal and we all work like a family and we want to take care of even the smallest guys. So don't think just because you don't have this massive amount of money that you're not important. You still are. And we want to make sure that y'all feel that way.
Absolutely. And just from the last panel, we were saying there's over, 10,000 operators? I mean, way more than that across the country. If everybody could pitch in what they could, whether it's 250, 1,500, 10,000, 1,000, whatever it is.
The roundup thing, right?
We would have more money than anything. But yeah, go on.
50,000 stores just in the Southeast, just from Virginia over to Arkansas and back over to Florida, roughly 50,000 stores. Everybody donated $100. Y'all do the math.
Yep.
$100 a month. Do the math. Like, guys, y'all go out to P.F. Chang's and spend $100. Yeah. You can't cough up $100 to keep selling products that are helping people? That's insanity to me.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, we'd be able to send Roe in a Louis Vuitton suit to the quick.
She'd have a political bank account this big.
Exactly. Were you, Dustin? Were you ever skeptical before you joined? Did you have
Not
any?
really. Leo was actually, Lee and his dad actually were the ones that brought me in, and his dad's become a good friend of mine. He pretty much told me, you want to get in my stores, you got to donate to JD. And, me and JD just hit it off from day one. It's a little over 2 years ago. And, I caught his vision. He's got a very humble, this guy is literally, if y'all don't know, he's a freaking superhero. This guy burns hours like I've never seen anybody burn. He's dedicated his entire life and being to this industry, to saving this industry. And the man gets very little credit.
Don't make me cry. I'm
Right.
I'm blushing.
I'll hold you later. I'll hold you later. I wanted to reinforce the fact that I feel like you're significantly under-recognized and incredibly humble, and that's what drew me to it. I didn't care about the, getting into an account or whatever. It was, this guy's passionate, and I, as somebody that went through addiction, went through a whole bunch of shit, and this saved my life. Yep. I feel extremely passionate that if we don't get together, we've got 6 months or less, guys, and we're going to have an extremely hard uphill battle next year if we don't get organized.
That's the reactive. We want to be proactive, not reactive, So let's get on it now and talk to anyone. We're here, so talk to any one of us. I would like to take this time. If you guys had any questions for any of the panelists here, if you guys had anything you guys want to talk about, just please raise your hand and ask them.
I did have a question about how are you going about educating people on the products and that it's federal legal cannabis. How do you go about that? Because right now we just got approved for like a Meta account for advertising. So we do advertisings, and we're trying to break that barrier because it's like, what is THCA? I don't know what that is. It's like, I don't want to say it's the same thing. I just want to say it's compliant, right? But I just wanted to know, like, what are your ways of getting around the hurdle as far as...
Do you want to answer that, Michael?
Yeah. For everyone, because I know we're all going.
Yeah, so on the Meta front, you got to be very careful on the compliance side, right? So if you're using the word cannabis, hemp, marijuana, you have to have asterisks, right? So what I recommend, or you bleep out specific letters so the customers understand what you're saying. What I recommend is basically you have your core brand page, right? And you can run advocacy ads for that, right? You can run advocacy ads, be fully transparent with a TOS of Meta. Don't try to circumvent their TOS, their terms of service. That's specific on the advocacy side. Now, if you're trying to do content, the thing with content on social media is stories it's a lot easier to grow your page if you're only doing stories. So some of the biggest cannabis brands don't do any posts. And the reason why is you'll have a post up and people can report it 2 weeks later, right? Whereas if you're just doing stories, you can continue to grow your customer base, do one-time offers, and make sure they're engaged and constantly paying attention to those stories. When it comes to educating your consumers, you could just let them know that 70, 80% of the products that are being sold at the big corporate cannabis stores would qualify as federally legal cannabis, i.e. hemp, right? That makes it a lot easier for them to understand. Something else they might not understand. Are you in Florida? North Carolina. Okay. A lot of these big companies are using they're using illegal herbicides, pesticides, plant growth regulators, fungicides. They're not flushing their products right. And what I'm afraid of as a cannabis advocate for over 15 years is what's happened to the hemp or the tobacco industry. Tobacco was a plant medicine for thousands of years. The natives used it, and now you've got R.J. Reynolds in it, causes a lot of harm. If these major companies get a hold of our industry and they kick out all the small guys, I'm afraid the cannabis is going to start causing cancer. Because I'll tell you right now, in the state of Florida, FDAC's deleted thousands of consumer health complaints. There's thousands of people in the state of Florida that have complained from breathing issues, neurological issues, all kinds of issues, and completely deleted from the FDAC's website.
Great response. And is there any other questions in the building? Right there.
Hi guys, I'm Tatiana. We own a distribution out of Orlando, Florida, but we also have a retail store. We tend to be one of the more educational stores that are focused on breaking down cannabinoids, making them scan QR codes, breaking down the COAs in front of them, making sure that it's a batch number matches the dates, all of that. So when it comes to labs, I had a question regarding the quality of labs, and I've heard that there are certain labs that test for certain substances and then others that don't, like for instance mushroom products. That has been a bigger issue as well, finding the legal ones, the non, and being able to separate. Do you have anything that you can kind of talk about as far as labs? Is there inconsistency in labs, and how can we find quality labs and or stick?
So
great question.
Yeah, this is a humongous issue, and it's not just in the hemp space, it's also in the marijuana space. Product testing of flower, concentrates, edibles, etc., is paramount to the success of the total industry. But it is the best kept secret of the large marijuana companies that oftentimes these laboratories don't have all the testing standards that they need for the various cannabinoids or the various pesticides or fungicides or whatever it is. And sometimes those labs are unethical and they'll, fudge lab reports and this kind of thing. So one of the things we're talking about in Washington, D.C. with Congress and senators and, attempting to get this information in front of the USDA, the FDA, TTB, et cetera, is a national testing standard that is set by a federal agency that all labs must adhere to. there's kind of a common misconception when we hear of a DEA registered lab that is testing these products. That means almost nothing. It means that the DEA can come in anytime they want and inspect and look at their products. But because we've come out of a 100-year prohibition, there are no testing standards in existence anywhere. This is a product that has never been exposed to modern science or modern agricultural science. So you've got thousands of laboratories. They buy a $50,000 HPLC machine or LCMS or GCMS machine, and they're off to the races. You've got a master's degree, a kid fresh out of college running the machine, and boom, you're pushing out test results, right? That is hugely problematic, even in the marijuana industry. In California, in Oregon, in New York, all of those, what we would call recreational marijuana states, are experiencing the exact same problem that may be happening in the hemp space, right? Like, which lab is the best? Why are they the best? Is it because they have the fastest turnaround times, right? Is that what matters to the business? If the turnaround time is what matters most and not the compliance and not the safety and not their testing standards, then we have a humongous problem. You're putting economics before consumer safety. You're putting economics before public health. That's a problem. And so how do you rectify that? And I would argue the only way to do that is a federal standard that must be applied to all 50 states. Now, the ASTM, which is a national standards organization, and NIST are working on a standard for testing as we speak. But they've been working on it for a decade. Is it going to come out 6 months from now? Is it going to come out 3 years from now? Is it going to be perfect? Are they going to debate it back and forth? No one knows. And so that's a core issue for federal legalization policy. The DEA is wrangling with it because all of the DEA's language is post-decarboxylation, GCMS testing. That is actually, in our industry, tampering with evidence because you're taking what the substance is today, you're applying heat and pressure and changing it, right? So if misapplied testing standards and no clear direction on testing could blow the entire industry up. I mean, it really could cause massive problems. So great question.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions in the house? Anybody? David, right?
Yeah, David.
Gotcha.
Again, guys. JD, just wanted to say congrats again on passing or getting that vetoed. Significant change here in Florida.
Sorry. It wasn't for me. I promise it wasn't for me. It was for all of you. I mean that. It was for every single person in this room and in this building. So, yeah.
Definitely appreciate that. Kind of touching on that same subject there with DeSantis. I was reading a little bit on it, and I guess he proposed a letter indicating that he wanted to at least put new regulations to be able to control and, I guess, regulate a little bit more these hemp products. Is DeSantis in favor of, keeping hemp on the books and not going against it, or what's his viewpoint? Because I'm not really too sure what his aspect of it.
Okay, so I can tell you, I don't live inside Governor Ron DeSantis' head, so I don't know his exact intent. But in the letter, he laid out some of the basics, right? He wants better testing, better packaging, age restrictions, some of these kind of common sense regulations. And I think one of the reasons Governor Ron DeSantis is so popular is he applies what most people would understand as common sense to any issue, right? I think he looked at this and I think he understood that this is thousands of small businesses just attempting to survive. And again, we're coming out of a 100-year prohibition. Are we going to break a few eggs to make our omelet? Absolutely. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not for several years, but we can work to make it better. And we should be given the opportunity to do so. And we shouldn't be thrown under the bus by giant corporations who are just trying to, take market share, right? That's where I think his head's at. And I don't know what's going to happen with Amendment 3 if it passes or if it fails, what's going to happen in the implementation bill. No one knows what's going to happen after November 5th. But my best guess is that he will certainly attempt to save the small business pathway. That's what I think is going to happen. But there's two different diverging paths, whether Amendment 3 passes or if it fails, and what does it look like after the fact? That's a really good question.
And at the end of the day, that's up to us to make sure that our voices get heard, and are making those changes. I found it interesting too, the point that I don't remember exactly who made the point, but that current cannabis industry, they only test products 2 times, and they're calling for more strict regulations. But yeah, if we're testing it, hemp industry is testing 3.75 or more, then we're already complying better than even the industry. So I think we have to make that known.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this as an agricultural commodity, people who grow corn grow millions of acres of corn, okay? There is not one farmer in the United States that can grow corn. It's not just one person. So why would we give up all of the small farmers and small businesses and all of the manufacturing and retailing of this product to a few large corporations? If it's an agricultural commodity, if anybody, I mean, there's a reason one of the colloquialisms is the word weed, because it's pretty easy to grow. You throw the seeds in the ground and boom, they sprout up, right? And so if it's easy to grow, if everybody, could attain it and grow it at their homes, whatever, why then should only a few large corporations be able to sell it? Again, I go back to the point. We are the 15th largest economy in the world, the state of Florida, third largest state in the country, and there are only 22 medical marijuana licenses. That is a license per million people. That is crazy. That's crazy. So, great question.
Does that wrap it up for questions? You guys have any other questions? Okay, perfect. If we can give a round of applause for our panelists right here. Perfect. Thank you guys all again for sure. There was a question, I think it was Tatiana and David. I just want to say real quick, going off what you were saying with lab reports or not enough labs, if 3 were to pass, we'd probably have a major problem with testing and stuff like that, right? Because there'd be a lot more flour and stuff getting pushed out and not enough labs, correct?
Okay, so let's just look at one state, for example, the state of California. It is estimated right now in the state of California that there are 3,600 illegal dispensaries, that the cartels, the gangs, are growing more illegal cannabis, estimated 5 times more illegal cannabis in California than all of the legal cannabis in the state combined. So I think one report showed they did like $1.5 billion or $2 billion in recreational sales, but they exported $12.5 billion in illegal marijuana. That's a real statistic, right? And so if you too tightly restrict any marketplace and you do not meet the consumer demand, that is what creates a black market. Consumer demand dictates the market, and if you don't meet the consumer demand, someone will fill in that gap. If Amendment 3 passes and not enough licenses are given out and there are not enough operators to meet that demand, the black market will look way worse than California. We live on the eastern seaboard. We live east of the Mississippi. Something like 60% of the U.S. population lives east of the Mississippi, and Florida is where they vacation. This is the #1 tourism state in the country. If there's not enough marijuana dispensaries open, where are all the tourists going to go? The black market. It will be the largest black market. Some estimates I've seen, it will be the largest black market for marijuana in the United States and anywhere in the world if it's not given, small businesses are not given a chance to participate. Yeah.
Perfect. And that wraps up that panel, guys. We have another one coming up here shortly.